Especially in imaging consulting, like you have to be I learned you have to be very, very precise and very specific on what you want, and you are totally in control in your life and what's going on in your relationship.
Absolutely.
And it has to be a balance. So there's three things. You want to make decisions spiritually. Have a spiritual mindset, you know. Number two, come from the soul. Make sure it has feeling, right? And then also you want to be logical about the decisions that you're making. So when you end up in these type of relationships where it's all about them and you have no say-so and you don't know how to make a decision because of somebody else's need, you have to understand that a lot of people make careless mistakes just by impulsive behavior. And when you have impulsive behavior, you're just doing things without thinking and logically processing the thought of what you're doing at that moment. Just like, you know, people go eat without thinking what's the consequence of this doing to their body. People do that with shopping, you know, different things. And when you're in a situation where you don't know how to make a decision, you have to understand, how does this situation benefit me in the long run? How does this help me?
Right.
And unfortunately, you're going to have to make some uncomfortable decision making. And it has to be beneficial to you and the both of you guys.
But you don't know, like, you've rushed into this not knowing that two years down the line, you're not going to like this person.
Well, see, that's the thing. You know, everybody, most of the time, we see the signs and we ignore it. Right?
Right.
And then we end up in these marriages, and then we end up in these relationships, and then we end up with different business partners that we don't know that's going to screw us up, you know, later on in life. But here's the thing. Once you start to recognize the behavior, effective communication is very, very important. You have to articulate that person. Like I learned over the couple of months, when you become offended by somebody or when somebody offends you, it's very important to let them know. The reason why is because somebody can be offending you and they know it, and because you didn't say anything, they're not going to do anything about it. And then some people really just don't know what is going on in your head because you have these, unspoken expectations. So effective communication is very important when it comes down to business relationship, romantic relationships, anything in the workplace or just in life in general. Once you start to see the behavior, once you start to see the things that aren't lining up with things that are contractual, things that you verbally discuss, you have to let them know. And based on the communication, then you have to make that uncomfortable decision.
Yeah, but how many people will? Like, they'll live in that uncomfortable position because of that emotional attachment that they have with somebody.
Everything in life is a choice. You have to make a choice. It's either you do it or you're not. And even if you choose to stay, there's still consequences. There are consequences that you got to put up with the people's behavior. You got to take care of the kids. You got to stay in the marriage because it's cheap to keep it, right? you got, you know, there's still consequences. But guess what? At the end of the day, there's still a choice on. You got to weigh your options. You have to go in situations with wisdom and understanding. It's very, very imperative.
Well, I know when people show you who they are,
believe them.
Believe them, because that's who they are, and like you said,
and if you let them talk long enough, they'll tell you.
Real quick, like
you have to start listening because people will tell you who they are.
No,
their behavior, the things that they say. If you listen and pay attention, they will tell you. That's what I said in the beginning. A lot of us see what's going on, but we ignore the signs because guess what? We have so much potential in the person because we see what they're good for or what they can do or what they can achieve. But if a person is not willing to do the things that you have the expectation of in your brain, it's not going to happen.
But that goes back to
forget about it.
That goes back to making emotional decisions. You making decisions with
of
your
how
heart.
We're feeling.
You can't make decisions with your heart. You got to make decisions with your brain.
Right, and that's why I also said it's a balance because you don't want to be too logical and you don't want to be too emotional. You have to have a healthy balance because there's a consequence on both ends. Because then when you're too logical, you have no feeling, you have no empathy, no sympathy, and then it's like, what What about how the other persons feel? Think about the decisions that you make, how they affect other people, right? But then when you're so emotional, your emotions are all over the place. You're not consistent. Nothing is very set in stone because you're fluctuating up and down, and nothing is very clear. You have to be very clear, very precise, and have effective communication. And then take ownership, take accountability, and don't always have guilt and regret and I shouldn't have did this. Oh my gosh, I was stupid. Just know that you've done it. It's done. What are we gonna do now? What is the solution? Because I learned when you stay in mess and you dwell in problems, that does something to your psyche. It gets you into a place of torment, and you're never going to prosper. The door is never going to open. You have to put yourself in being a solution. Okay, what happens when you're in the problem? You come up with a solution. You have to move on. You have to get over those obstacles, because things come in life, things happen in life, but you have to know how to get over them and get to the next level.